everyone. It's so great to see people in person and to be back at the conference center. Today, we are here to talk about a journey that started 4 years ago. It was an idea to start transforming the way that H&M works with prices for our sale periods. And we started small. It was just one market and one small sale period that we wanted to try out to see if we can use data and if we can use AI in order to transform the way that we do the prices. And now, 4 years later, we have a successful product that we have scaled to several markets and that we're going to talk a bit more about today. My name is Linda Virkkala, and I'm the product owner of one of our AI products within H&M, which is working with the online pricing for sale periods. And with me today, I also have Misbah Uddin, who is the competence lead for our machine learning engineers and also a coder himself. And you will hear more from Misbah in just a little bit. And for those of you online, he is actually here next to me, but you will see him in a bit. So how did we do this? We have 3 components that we have identified here that we want to share with you. And one of those is to be value-driven when we're working with our AI products. The second is to experiment and test a lot. And the last one is to have full ownership of the product with an end-to-end ownership of what we are doing. So let's go through all of these things in a bit more detail. And value for us is a two-folded thing. So firstly, it means that our product should be profitable, that we're actually making money when we're building our AI products. And this is something that is super important in order to stay relevant and to know that the value that we're bringing to the business is also something that we can cherish and see on the balance sheet of what we're doing. The second part is to also reduce manual processes. So in our case, we have merchandisers who are working with the prices. And previously, they were doing this fully manually. And now they can have recommendations that will simplify and help their process of work, which means that they can, instead of set with a lot of Excel lists and a lot of different things that they need to coordinate just to set the right price on an article, they can spend that time working with other more value-driven things, like putting like the seasonality of and the commerciality of the season. So these are 2 things that we measure on a frequency of 4 times per year when we have our sale periods, and something that we really need to make sure that we stay on top of in order to stay relevant for our business users. And the part of scaling has also been to experiment and test a lot. So we want to go from idea to an experiment to actually scaling that. So we set up an hypothesis and see and test if that is something that we actually want to do, and then go forward. So an example of this is when we have introduced new markets to our product. So what we did in this particular case was that we did an A/B experiment. So part of the market is still pricing manually, and the other part is then getting the price recommendations from our algorithm. And by this, we can measure and see that the effects that we're doing with our algorithm is actually making the process better. And in this way, we can then also see that if there's something we need to learn, if we need to do it better, or if we should actually go ahead and just launch it as it is going forward. So it enables us to fail fast and to learn a lot in the process, but it also enables us to be faster to launch things in production when we actually want to do it. And a key to this is that we run it and we own it. So we have the full operational part of the product. And this goes, as you can see on the slide here, from results to algorithm to code, but also to infrastructure and the way that we're working within the product with all the processes. So this, of course, gives a lot of responsibility and accountability for us as a product team to work with this, since we have to put up all the ways of working, but also having a lot of different types of competencies within the team to be able to manage what we want to do. But in the end, I think it's still totally worth it because it's something that enables us to really take charge of what we want to do and what we feel and believe in is the next big thing that we should do for the product. And if you compare this to some of the places that I've worked with before, when you had to go to architectural boards or like get approval from some governance meeting, it's a lot faster in the way that we're able to operate. But how do we actually do it? So in order to make this work, we need to have a fully cross-functional team. So our team spans from data scientists to data analysts to machine learning engineers, software engineers, and me as a product owner and the scrum master that helps all of this. And this is part of the competencies that we need in the team in order to run the full end-to-end product. But it also doesn't really come by itself that everything just works and flourishes by itself when we're working together. When I took over the team, we could see that it was quite siloed. So we had some people that were working a lot with just the AI system and more specifically with our infrastructure and were kind of managing that part of the code. We had our data scientists that were doing the model preparation for each of the sales seasons, which we do 4 times a year. So you can imagine like doing that as a repetitive task, it doesn't really get that exciting anymore. So I really wanted to start to break these barriers because if you look at it from 2 perspectives, it's firstly not so fun for the individual working in the team, but it's also not so good for us as a team to have such important knowledge locked in within a few individuals within the team. So we really needed to make sure to start working a bit more as a team. And what I wanted to do was to really make sure that we had still some expertise within certain areas. As a machine learning engineer, it doesn't make sense that you're like an expert in building Power BI dashboards or something that our data analysts are doing. But it makes sense that you know how it kind of works, what we are reporting, and like how that interaction with the business is working, so that we can have some interaction within the team. And we talk about this in H&M as T-shaped profiles. I think it's a more or less wide concept, but making sure that we have those basics right within the team. And when we looked into what of those things that should be properly managed as a team activity, we saw 3 things. One was the sale operation, which means that we need to make sure as a team that we can handle each sale period in order to deliver prices to our business users. And this is super important because without this, we have basically very small existential value. So this is something that we need to keep up and make sure that everyone can help and contribute with in order to really make sure that our product is delivering what we are supposed to do. The second is around sale preparation. So I mentioned this a bit before, that this is something that we do on a quite continuous basis and something that was a bit locked in within a certain role within the team. Now it's a rotational schedule so that we make sure that we can be prepared and make sure that we can deliver the new models for each sales season in order to really make sure that that's a team knowledge and not something that is just locked in within 1 or 2 individuals. And lastly, it is around platform management, and that means that everyone in the team needs to be able to work efficiently with the settings that we have. So it's not like super simple for a developer always to come in and work with this like decentralized platform, which is quite complex with all the components as you saw before. So we need to have really good onboarding and make sure that people that join the team really get up to speed and can work efficiently as fast as possible. And now you've heard a bit more about the kind of overall things that we have been doing with this product. But Misbah, why don't you talk more about what some best practices are when working with an AI product?
Thank you, Linda. So So we didn't have the liberty to, start from scratch. We kind of joined when this team was ongoing, and we had to make sure that we could make changes to the team and the platform so that it doesn't disrupt our operations, but at the same time we move in the right direction. And our main challenge was how can we change from a functional team delivering values to a highly scalable team, a very efficient team. So we see that one of the core areas to focus is tech foundation. And tech foundation from delivering values to a lot of market needs a very different line of thinking. So one thing we needed to consider quite a lot is that how do we automate the routine process? It's all about connecting the dots, right? So every steps of delivering values needs to be connected as much as possible. If you have people engage in between those steps manually, then scaling up basically means you need to hire more people, which is not easy thing to do. And then of course not everything can be automated. It's a lot of expert driven work. We have data scientists, business specialists, and platform specialists, and then it sometimes you need experts opinion to make the right call. And therefore, places where we could not automate, rather we rely on the insight from the experts, we needed to invest in highly collaborative environment like, for code management, we needed to get people working a lot with Git like distributed version control system. For model management, we needed to work with collaborative environment like MLflow, and there are many other collaborative platforms that you can think about. However, it's always important to stay ahead of the curve. The things that you are doing inefficiently right now, people are investing a lot on building technologies that will make them efficient in future. And then you need to be ahead on that curve, because so that you know what is coming. You are not developing competing solutions that is half standard, right? So you try out those features early. You see what is going to come in your tech stack. But most importantly, you need to know that we live in the world of big data. We live in the world where we are rolling out a lot of models, a lot of insights, a lot of knowledges as fast as we can. And that basically means embracing distributed computation platforms, embracing multi-threading, multi-processing platforms. Now, unfortunately, we didn't have that liberty when we take on those challenges, but if you can invest on those early, like build your data pipelines using Spark or any other distributed computing platforms, please do so. Now it's not just technology; it's also the team. Like Linda shared earlier, we needed to work on sale operations, we needed to work on sale preparation, we needed to work a lot on platform management. Now, if we have specialists working on all those areas, then what we are creating is basically silos of knowledge, right? And then everyone talks about having T-shaped profile, right? But the question is, how do you build a T-shaped team? Like a team that enables creating more and more T-shaped profiles, right? We see that it's important that whatever is the basics for us, programming, data analysis, knowing the business operations, these everyone should know about it with different levels of expertise, but everyone should know about it. Like when the sale operation comes, you do not have only two people who can do it, right? You can have any people who can do it with different levels of efficiency. Then you have multi-dimensional learning strategy. You encourage people to take courses, you encourage people to work together, data scientists and machine learning engineer working in parallel, right, in tandem. And then you encourage people to do hackathons, test ideas, right? And then you also encourage people to stretch a little bit, challenge themselves. It's important to aim as high as possible, right? Not like think about what is our current reality. The main challenge to think about is what should be our reality in 3 years, right? How should we want to operate in 3 years? Now, but the one thing that both Linda and I quite agree is that, we have to be experimental. we always have to test hypothesis. Testing hypothesis means that you release often, but it's not like you have a big task, you break it down into small chunks, and then you release in a continuous basis. You always have to think about whatever you're releasing, what idea are you testing? Okay, sometimes you need to go broad, like you want to see what sort of technologies are out there that can enable us to do so. Then you start broad, but once you identified maybe these two pieces are important, then you go narrow, right? And then you go broad again. And how do you switch between broad and narrow? It comes from your practice, but it means that you need to have experimental mentality all the time. It's never like you plan the whole thing. You need to be ready to be surprised. And one thing that we should all agree, that people move. People move from their team. People move in their life. People move from company to company. And it's a reality of today. No one stays in the team for 5 years. No one stays in the company for 20 years anymore. There are few people who do that, but the industry standard is not there anymore. So we cannot have specialist people having all the knowledge, right? We need to rather rely on processes so that there will always be some tribal knowledge. But the fact is, how can we reduce that dependency, right? So I mean, there are some obvious ways how we can address that, like working on documentation, adopting diversity, because when you get, diverse team members, like, different levels of education, different gender, different race, different background, different ways of working, right? You are forced to come down from your high horses and, explain it in a manner that, easily understandable by people from different backgrounds, right? And then, like, you cannot assume that whatever everyone knows it. Whatever you're thinking, everyone is thinking about that, right? So diversity is quite important. And then you need to have interfaces to your angels and demons, your advisors and people who has walked the walk before and have had painful experiences about it, right? And you have those interface points, right? You talk to them all the time. So it cannot be like team always thinking inwards. It has to be a bit outwards as well. But most importantly, you have to increase the amount of sharing within the team and outside of the team. Have regular demos, have regular discussions within the team, but also, encourage people to go to brown bag lunch talks. That's what we take a lot of pride in ourselves. We host 4 to 8 brown bag lunch talks every month, and then we encourage our team members to present there. Like, it doesn't have to be a big idea. It can be a small idea, but can have a bigger impact if tens of people learn from it, right? And it's not always about like, what is the best thing you did? It is also about what is the bad thing you did and you learn from it. So, and then, like sending out regular emails about, what's the update in your overall team, right? Like what you managed to achieve, what you learn, and you send those information out, like, weekly emails, or, keep your stakeholders informed. But when you start sharing more and more, you spread the knowledge. Then all of a sudden, it's not that, MDO team knows MDO, right? It's other team knows about it as well. Now, to sum it up, what I would like to say is that there are these 3 key principles that we stick with, and then that have paid us in dividends. The first one is, taking the full ownership. If we can do it, we should do it. Okay? If the solution is not there for us to, do it by, like, maybe it's not our area of expertise. Maybe it's the infrastructure that we are not good at. But if the infrastructure setup is not there ready for us, we have to build it ourselves, right? And then, of course, we are not doing the best job, but still we have to do it. We always have to think about industrializing. It's about deliveries. It's about rolling out day in, day out, right? Because we want fast feedback. Are we doing it good? Can we do better? But it all has to do with delivering consistently, right? And therefore, if you have to deliver consistently, you have to build the system not not for the experts. You have to build the system so that, routine things can be done as fast as possible. And most importantly, when the demand for scaling comes up, it creeps up on you. So you need to anticipate that. You need to see at least months ahead, like you may need to scale up. And then you start building pieces in your platform that could handle the scale up. You can start building your team that can handle scale up. You cannot be ready, like an operational team cannot go scale up next month. It doesn't work like that. Doing simple thing on a large volume is not easy. It needs experience and practice, right? So you need to anticipate that early. With that, I would like to thank you for this listening to this talk. Thank you.
We're going to do